Hey everyone, I know it's been a while since I released a full-length video, but I am back and covering a game that's been requested by tons of viewers over the years. It is Dead Space. In this one we'll be doing the usual and taking a look at out-of-bounds secrets, where the necromorphs come from, what is out in space, and of course the final scenes from different perspectives. It's been a long time coming, but I certainly hope you enjoy it.
How many times you watched that thing? Guess you really miss her. Don't worry, we're almost there.
The opening scene begins with the crew, including us as the protagonist Isaac, travelling to the part of space containing the ship the USG Ishimura. Now, if we take the camera out the back of the shuttle, we can see how the wormhole effect in front of us is created. It is in fact just a 2D animation effect placed right in front of the shuttle windows, which may seem simple, but it's certainly effective. If you ever wondered what else is out in space, well, I've moved the camera way over to the left of the shuttle so we can get a side-on view, and as you can see, a lot of the objects out here, including the rocks and the space dust, are again all 2D textures. This is including the gigantic planet in the background. Then if we keep moving further into the distance, we finally come to a sky dome, or space dome I should say in this instance, and this thing is also gigantic. Just to give you a rough idea of how big it is, I'm going to be moving the camera backwards from its normal position on the shuttle. Now at this point, bear in mind I'm moving the camera roughly 20 times faster than it normally would whilst Isaac is running, and because of the draw distance, you're gonna see practically everything start to disappear long before we get to it. Here it comes. There it is, we finally made it. Now this thing is massive. In fact, even changing the field of view on the camera, I couldn't seem to get the whole thing into one shot without it being totally distorted. However, there is a reason why it is so big. Some of you eagle-eyed viewers may have just noticed some objects floating behind the shuttle. Well, that's because a lot of the interior sections to the Ishimura are held and loaded up once we get to them, within this very space dome. So the objects are sometimes pre-loaded into position, basically to cut down on loading times later on. If you've played Dead Space until the final scene, you'll know that we do see Isaac's face at the very end, but a viewer request came from Storm on Twitter asking about what's under his helmet, so just in case anybody else was wondering, the easiest way I could think to do this to get a proper look at it was to remove his helmet itself, and by doing this we can see left behind is just the lower part of a model of Isaac's neck and lower head.
What the hell?
I don't know, something's in the room with us.
Jesus! Open fire! Open fire!
One of the most requested curiosities that I received about Dead Space was whether I could take a look at where the characters and the necromorphs come from. Now, I'm not going to pretend there's anything unusual going on behind the scenes here. It's all pretty standard with them spawning and despawning in and out of the scenes out of camera shot. Therefore, I'm not going to go through the whole game showing this. Just remember, whenever you think a person or a creature has appeared from nowhere, that's because 9 times out of 10 they have. There is, however, a little fun to be had with the necromorphs that spawn near the elevator, and I'd like to thank friend of the channel Isolated Entropy for letting me know about this. The doorway to the elevator has a trigger inside, meaning if we keep going inside and out, we can make the necromorph spawn and despawn at will. It'll be interesting to see if we can repeat this trick in the remake too. Another request sent in was to see what happens behind closed doors when Isaac upgrades his suit, and I've got to admit it did cross my mind too. It's actually a simple model swap that happens very quickly, but I guess it's worth showing just in case any of you viewers wanted to know this too. Although it may not exactly be big news to find out that character models are spawned into the scenes, there is an interesting way this is used out of sight from the player. For instance, when we see shadows moving around corners or behind us.
Centrifuge activated.
Let's take a look at some out of bounds now. In various scenes we can see out into space. We already know space is a huge dome that surrounds the map, and quite often from out of bounds we can only see the sector of the map loaded that the player is stood inside, which makes sense. Some of the outside sections though do have various backdrops. Normally the giant planet can be seen, which again is a 2D texture. Though some of the other areas do have different tricks to give the illusion of being in space. For instance, in this particular scene, we can see the sky dome slowly spinning.
Manual override initiated.
One of the main parts of the game that I wanted to take a look at is when the alien creature is clinging onto the side of the ship, and in particular the crash which takes place after dispatching of this thing. You may not know it, but believe it or not, the ship that we see crash into us is always out there in space. In fact, it's not too far behind the alien creature. However, more about that in just a moment. If you wondered where the fuel tanks and other debris is coming from, it spawns under the map before being flung at us, and after shooting the legs off the alien creature, it floats away just behind the section of ship we can see on the right. As I mentioned earlier, the ship that crashes into us is always out there, and we can just about see it here floating in space. Now it looks incredibly small, and that's because at the moment it is, but I'll show you from a few different angles just how this ship becomes ginormous, which creates the illusion of it coming towards us. Alright, so we are coming towards the end now, and we've landed on the planet next to the giant crater that's been cracked open. So of course, we need to take a look at the section of the planet that's being held above us, and also take a look at what's out there. You can't normally see the bottom of the crater, but it does go fairly deep. The star is actually a small light source floating just over the top, and if we take a look over the opposite side, we can find that the buildings way over in the distance are 2D. And yes, you've probably already guessed it, so is that part of the planet that's being held above us. However, Whilst all this may seem basic and pretty unflattering looking at it like this from these angles, I do have to say the developers have done a superb job at creating that feeling of being in a vast and harsh environment which looks amazing, whilst keeping the processing times to a bare minimum by using these simple but effective developer tricks and techniques. Also, on the topic of the cracked part of the planet, did you know that once Kendra has walked away, if you stick around long enough over the course of maybe 3 to 4 minutes, you can see the chunk of planet slowly become bigger and bigger, giving the impression of it falling towards us. A really cool detail that some may have missed. We're going to take a look at the end game boss. Now, the first time we get a glimpse of this thing isn't in the final area that we fight it, but if we move the camera higher so we can see over the edge, at this point you can see it's only its arms that are loaded in. Then it disappears back down into the crater until a little later. Which is when, if we pause the action to take a better look, we can see it's taken its full form, and we can also take a peek at just how big this monster is. This thing literally dwarfs the playing area. In fact, just to give you a rough idea of how big it is, I took the camera to the highest point of the creature and took a bird's eye view of the map. It is a long way up. Although it never looks to be the case, I was also surprised to find how far back the creature is positioned from the playing area. You may have spotted there when the shuttle takes off during the final scenes, it looks as though it's the map falling away from the shuttle, not the other way around. In fact, it can be found just underneath where the player is no longer able to see. Alright, that is it for Dead Space. It's been a long time coming, but thank you so much for the support, and to those who gave suggestions to what they'd like to see included. I think I managed to fit most of them in. If you have any mysteries or general behind the scenes or out of bounds curiosities that you'd like to know about a game you're playing, come and join me on Discord and I'll see what I can do. Until the next time, as always, take care everyone.